Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Andrew Yang, and we're specifically going to talk about my attempts to yang the masses through Yang merch. All right, so this is a report from the ground, the political ground, and my activity to yang large groups of people through Yang merch and how that worked and what the experience was, and just some on the ground details to talk about where we're at. Okay, so of course, I'm a huge fan of board games, and this last weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I spent at PAX Unplugged 2019 in Philadelphia. PAX Unplugged is a Penny Arcade expo. It was originally owned by Penny Arcade. Penny Arcade is a video game web comic. They started PAX. And PAX are a bunch of conventions that are aligned with Penny Arcade. I think it's not actually owned by Penny Arcade now. It's just aligned with Penny Arcade. But PAX Unplugged, so Penny Arcade is aligned with video games. PAX Unplugged is specifically a huge convention. About more than 30,000 people attend this convention every year. And it's been going on in Philadelphia. This is its third year. So there's tens of thousands of people that attend this convention. The convention is all tabletop games. So tabletop board games, that's the number one. Tabletop miniature games, that's number two. Tabletop role-playing games, that's number three. It's all tabletop games. And you can interact with tabletop games in a vast array of ways, right? You can play in tournaments. You can learn to play tabletop role-playing games. They have a huge tabletop tabletop games. So it's mostly board games, right? I would say it's like 60% board games, 20% miniatures, and 20% tabletop role-playing games. But the majority of it is board games. They have a huge expo hall where you can buy board games. They have a huge area where you can play in tabletop board game tournaments. They have a huge tabletop library where you can check out games, play them, and then put them back. And check them back into the library. Really, really fun. There's areas where you can learn to play board games, and you can also have a first look area where you can see board games that aren't even released yet. They're fully produced, but they haven't been released, right? And you can see games from all over the world. It's truly incredible. And this attracts board game enthusiasts from literally all over the world, right? Most of them are from the U.S., and most of them are from the East Coast. But there are truly people who travel from countries all over the world to come to this world-class board game convention, right? So I was going to this. I've had my tickets for quite a while. Me and my whole family went. And so I knew there was going to be 30,000 plus people here. So I planned out my merch. So every single day I wore my math hat. On Friday, I wore my Yang 1992 shirt, t-shirt. And on Saturday, the big day when most people are there, I wore my Yang 2020 shirt. Okay. So I had summer, and on Sunday I couldn't wear a Yang shirt. I only owned two, and on you can't re-wear a shirt you wore in the last 2 days. That's like a convention trope, like that people don't bathe enough. You don't want to walk into the stereotype, right? So I had to wear a different shirt. I wore my I Godzilla Tokyo shirt on the third day, but I did wear my Yang shirts on the first 2 days, right? And I had some Yang encounters based on my merch, right? So actually, the first thing that happened was I actually met up. This is pretty incredible. I met up with a subscriber from Massachusetts. So there's a biologist in Massachusetts who listens to my videos. And when I talked about tabletop role-playing games, he did the math. He knew I was from Philadelphia, and he texted me and said, hey, are you going to be at PAX Unplugged? I said, yes. He said, let's meet up. And so we did. So on Friday, this YouTube subscriber of mine and I met up, and we sat at a table at PAX. And the PAX tables are public, so there's lots of people playing lots of games. And so we were just talking, and we were talking Yang, and we were talking board games, right? Now, I had to wait about 20 minutes for this person to arrive, just based on some, panel, going to this panel and, just getting all the logistics of meeting together, right? So for about 20 minutes, I was sitting at this table, and to my left, before this Massachusetts biologist, who is a subscriber to my channel, who is Yang Gang, showed up, I was sitting next to this small group of three people. There was a father who had a British accent, and then two of his sons who had no British accent and totally spoke American. One was high school age, and one was junior high age. So the father had a huge board game out that was clearly going to take about an hour, 2 hours. He was playing that board game with his junior high son, and the two of them were very engaged in this very complicated board game. And next to them was this sullen teen sitting next to me, between me and so there's me, there's a sullen teen who's the son of this father, right? And the father's there playing this game against his junior high son. And I was like, I wonder why the kid's not playing with his dad and his brother, right? And it was really interesting. And so, and he was just texting, and I was like, oh, that's kind of sad, like typical, like you're walking into the stereotype millennial, just sitting there sullen on your, clicking away on your cell phone, right? So I was taking some notes and reading some stuff, and I always look at what board games there, and I'm a pretty observant person, so the people next to me, I was aware of this situation next to us, right? So the Massachusetts subscriber comes over, and the Massachusetts biologist who subscribes to my channel comes over, and we have this great meetup. So we're meeting for the first time. We shake hands. We both have our Yang 2020 shirts on. I was really excited, and we started talking immediately about tabletop role-playing games. And I was telling, because I ran a tabletop role-playing game called Index Card RPG this weekend at PAX. I used it to retell I ran it 4 times at PAX Unplugged for groups of 5 players each, and what we did was we used Index Card RPG to retell the story of Game of Thrones Season 8. It was a blast. We had a great time. Spent a good deal of my time at the convention running this game as a game master. And so this Massachusetts biologist, who's a subscriber, actually talked with me and showed me the game he's really interested in. He runs a game called Open Legend, which is a totally free tabletop role-playing game that you can get the rules for online for nothing. He had a beautifully printed version, which is not free, and shared that with me and just showed me what it could do and what it was all about. And we had this really cool conversation about it, and then we sat down and we started talking about Yang, right? And both of us were lamenting that Yang is not qualified for debate number 6, and what a huge problem this is, and how worried we were about it, right? And I couldn't believe it. And so we're getting to the end of this conversation about Yang not being qualified, and this sullen teen from next to us just kind of leans over and says, "Yang Gang, it's really cool that you guys are supporters." I couldn't believe it. This kid had not said a word, as his father and his junior high son. I could see his father looked over and was like, "What? Why is my son talking to those two?" And we just both thumbs up the kid, and then continued our conversation between the two of us. And the reason why was, it was clearly confusing to the father why his son had just said Yang Gang, and I'm pretty sure his dad probably didn't know who Yang was, right? But this sullen high school teenager knew, right, and was able to just communicate his support for Yang to us by saying Yang Gang, right? It was a surprising moment, and it was really, really interesting. So we finished up our conversation. There's a million things to do at the con, so then we separated and went our separate ways, right? So that was encounter number 1 for Andrew Yang on the ground, right, at the convention. So basically day 2, all right? I'm there with my family the whole day, and we play in a whole bunch of tabletop tournaments. We played in Exploding Kittens. The entire Garibay family was defeated in round 1. We then played Carcassonne, The entire family, Garibay family, was defeated in round one of Carcassonne. However, when I sat down to play Carcassonne, I sat down with a group of four other players, and I'm sitting across the seat from another player, and we're waiting about 5 minutes for the tournament to begin, and one of the players said, young gentleman, I would say he was probably working age, probably just left college, between like 25 and 30. He looks across and he goes, Yang. And he looks at my shirt and he says, Yang. He goes, that guy's really interesting. I think he says, I think it's really sad how they've been excluding him from the polls, right? And so he goes about talking and explaining that he thinks that it's unfair what's happening with Yang, but he also says, I think Yang's got a long way to go and I'm not sure he can make it, right? So he was saying he's recognizing Yang media blackout. He was an engaged political, at least an engaged political voter, like doing his research before voting, right? But he also was a non-believer, right? Like he really didn't believe Yang could go the full distance, right? And one of the other players, right, said, yeah, I've been following him too. He's really interesting. I've seen him in a couple of debates. It's clear he's not a politician. I thought that's a really interesting thing that this other player would say. And then to my right was the fourth player in our Carcassonne tournament pod, and it was clear that he was not comfortable with politics being discussed at a Carcassonne tournament, right? Which I totally get, right? I get that, right? And I will say this. The only political merch I saw with 30,000 people in attendance was my shirt and then Massachusetts Schreiber's shirt. I did not see a single Bernie shirt. I did not see, forget it. I've never seen a Warren shirt in my life. I did not see a Biden shirt. I saw nothing. My Yang shirt, the Massachusetts subscribers shirt, that's it. That's all there was. It's all I saw the entire weekend, right? So I get that some people are like, hey, this is my hobby, that's my politics, we keep them separate. I understand that. We ain't got time, right? Like we're coming up to the election. I really feel we need to take moments to use merch to Yang people. It's important, right? Especially when we know when we're going into an environment where there's going to be tens of thousands of people that can say, hey, this person has real live non-bot supporters who really care for paving the road for that candidate, for Andrew Yang, to be president, right? Now, this dude who initiated this conversation with me about Andrew Yang absolutely wrecked me in round one of Carcassonne, defeated me, sent me out of the Carcassonne tournament, okay? So that was very, very, that was my second Yang encounter. Later that day, on Saturday, I went down to the indie tabletop role-playing game area, and I was going to run one of my games. And out of the indie tabletop role-playing game area walked a young man. I would say he was college age, right? And he stopped, like he was approaching. He was going to walk past me. We were going to walk past each other, and he stopped at a point about 5 feet away from me, and he went, you're Scott Garibay, right? Like, so he is a Philadelphia person. I'm a Philadelphia person. And he simply watched my videos, and he introduced himself. I shook his hand, and he says, I really enjoy your videos. This is wild. And he says, but I'm also not surprised to see you here because in your Yang videos, you talk about Dungeons and Dragons. So I thought, oh, maybe Scott will be there. And so I thought it was really wild. And, it's interesting. It's always interesting getting, kind of recognized. It's a little surprising. But it was really, really excellent. That was Yang encounter number 3. All right, then Yang encounter number 4 was I was walking the expo hall where they sell literally probably 1,000 tabletop role-playing games. Different role-playing games are sold on the expo floor. It's incredible how many games there are. And I passed a Dungeons and Dragons YouTube channel lead, right? So I'm a huge Dungeons and Dragons fan, and I am aware of some of the top Tabletop Roleplaying Game, Dungeons and Dragons commentators on YouTube. They know me, I know them. So I walked past one of these YouTube channel leads. He has over 100,000 subscribers, and he sees me, I see him, and he goes, "Hey, Scott." So we talked a little bit, right? And he goes, a lot of times I'll watch your videos, but I have to be very careful not to like your videos because I watch your videos through my Dungeons and Dragons channel. So if I were to like your video, my hobby channel would be making a political statement, which I thought was really, really funny. And I laughed. I thought, oh, that's interesting that, he doesn't switch over to his own account because he's on that account all the time. Like, he has to comment and do a lot of responses and different things like other people's videos, that kind of thing. But when you have a channel and you like things, you're kind of endorsing those things from that perspective of that channel. So I thought that was really fascinating. So that was Yang Encounter number 4. It was truly incredible. That last one was just somebody I knew who was saying that they watch my political videos and they need to be careful when they are on their own non-political channels. So I thought that was really, really fascinating because I never thought of it from that perspective. So all of that was excellent. There's some goods and there's some bads about it. I think it was. I really felt proud to share my Yang enthusiasm with people through my merch. I was very excited to have these 3. I'm not going to count the last one. The last one's a little unusual. These 3 Yang encounters, right, in public. The good thing were all 3 of those first encounters I talked about. All 3 of those people were under the age of 30. So it is good that there are some young people who are engaging in politics and are quite aware of what Yang is doing and how he is attempting to move forward. The bad is, unfortunately, all 3 were male and all 3 were white, right? So Yang has been struggling to widen the diversity of his base. I think he's doing better on this, and I can guarantee you that it, I don't want to conflate those two things. The reality is, still, obviously, there's work that needs to be done, right? So, and we have to work a little harder to make sure that Yang is able to attract women voters, people of color, people of different preferences, the whole 9, right? So we want to be able to expand that out a bit. And so it was one thing that was kind of identified that we definitely need to move forward on. So it was a really nice weekend. I was really proud to share my Yang enthusiasm with my merch. PAX Unplugged was absolutely amazing. Had the best time, and I'm really glad that Yang could be part of that experience in one small way. Thank you for letting me take an opportunity to just share that experience with you and just kind of give you a report on the ground of what it looks like to interact with people through your merch. I highly suggest that if you have merch, wear it as publicly as possible. And also, I had to be very careful about this weekend. I wish this was not true about me, but Scott Garibay, I am not a good loser, right? And frankly, I'm not a good winner, right? Like, I'm an incredibly competitive person. I have to be careful about how I interact with people when I win or lose. And when I was wearing the Yang shirt, I remembered at every moment, hey, today you're not just winning or losing for Scott Garibay, but since you're wearing this merch, you're speaking to what Yang Gang stands for. And so I was really careful to be very, very winsome and wonderful and kind when I lost, and be just as winsome and kind when I won. So when you're wearing your merch, be careful. Remember, you are representing Yang when you're wearing his shirt, right? So just be careful of that. But wear your merch publicly, wear it with pride, and wear it as much as you possibly can because it helps. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.